We're here, we're actually for something else, but we saw on the agenda that you had Bill 80 to improve or to change the traffic pattern in Kealoha to one-way by James Kealoha Park. So we certainly, as the major adjacent landowner, are supportive of that bill, and want to thank Councilmember Leloy for including us in those conversations early on. So that's it for today. Thank you.
Mahalo, Mr. Nahalea. Bill 80, please.
Bill 80 amends Chapter 24, Article 10, Division 2 of the Hawaii County Code, 1983-2016, edition as amended relating to moving vehicles. Amends Section 24-267, Schedule 15, one-way streets, subsection C, South Hilo, by adding Keaukaha Road and Kalanianaole Street to Komokuna Street. The new one-way traffic pattern through James Kealoha Beach Park is intended to increase safety in and around the park area. Reference Communication 596, introduced by Ms. Ruggles by request.
Mahalo. May I please have a motion to forward Bill 80 to Council with a positive recommendation?
So moved.
It's been moved by Ms. Leloy, seconded by Mr. Richards. Ms. Leloy.
Thank you, Chair. If I could take a moment to call up Alapaki Nahalea and then Officer Matt Lewis back to our table. And if I could just provide the council with a little bit of a backdrop. James Kealoha Park, we saw this a few months ago, in which we had a number of testifiers, and what we were moving forward was a strategic plan to address a lot of the crime and alcohol that was being consumed at the park. And so at that time, we came up with some strategic steps to really begin to transition that park to more of a passive park. So we started with parks, the landowners, Kamehameha Schools, the Department of the Police Department, and then the Prosecuting Attorney's Office to really collect the data and understand, how to move this forward. Then we introduced a bill for the prohibition of alcohol at that park, and that became in effect, Officer Lewis, that was in October. It was in October. And then the next steps was to slow what was a lot of racing and speeding through the park. So it was at that time we also revisited the leadership at Kamehameha Schools, to work with them on what their long-range master plans were for Honolulu, which is the adjacent properties to Kealoha Beach Park. And if I could just take a minute and ask Mr. Nahalea to just share briefly what the larger vision is for Honolulu as the adjacent property owner, and how this traffic pattern actually complements and enhances their long-range goals and plans, and then their educational opportunities over there. So, Mr. Nahalea, if you could, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I guess I'll keep it brief. It's hard to encapsulate, all that's in that plan. I think I'll start off by saying that it's a plan that we did with community from Keaukaha. So we're real proud of that it's trying to take into consideration not just our interests, our trust interests, but also what's best for that community. So it includes continuation of many of our AINA-based education programs there, particularly the two fish ponds that are adjacent to that property. A lot of the cultural activities we do at the Laihala Point. And then also, many of you who know Keaukaha know we just took down that old tropical dream site, which because it's in the SMA area took a lot of time, but we have in the plan some commercial generation concepts, just conceptual right now, that we want to do in conjunction with the community. So that's kind of an overview. I think certainly being adjacent to that wonderful beach park makes it a rich area for community. Having been born and raised in Keaukaha, I know how important that area is to all of Hilo.
Thank you, Mr. Nahalea. And now, Mr. Lewis, if you could share a little bit about how the previous bill with the prohibition of the alcohol at that park you know, and some of the gains that we're already beginning to see at that beach park, and how this is just a real natural and real strategic step as far as switching the traffic pattern over there.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Council and
Morning.
Chair Poindexter. I'm Officer Lewis. Like Councilmember Liloy stated, this is my area.
Excuse me, is your mic on?
It shows red.
I think you, yes, move it. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm Officer Lewis. I'm the community police officer for the Kealoha area from the Suisun River mouth all the way down into Kings Landing, working with the community and council member here, trying to restructure that park to make it more user friendly. And one of the aspects, like we were saying, was to get the alcohol prohibition, which was done a couple months ago, and re-looking at the park as a whole. The traffic pattern that goes through the park is one way up until a gate where it meets a two-way traffic pattern with no turnaround point, no parking. So we run into some safety issues, cars going against each other, traffic going both ways on a what's more designed as a one-way road. And meeting with the community members there, residents in the area with Kamehameha Schools, we all sat down and thought that's one of the things to help the safety of the area is to continue that one-way through so we don't have cars coming to that abrupt stop. And it makes a little bit more sense when you look at it on paper as well.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Officer Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Nahalea. I'm going to be urging my council members to go ahead and support this bill. It really is, I think, a model of some public-private community partnerships to really listen to what the community needs are, and then, you know, march through the policies and the legislative process to give them what they're asking for. So I yield at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Leloy. Council members, anyone else? Ms. O'Hara?
If I'm not mistaken, we have an amendment to this bill, correct? Bill number 80, in terms of language in the section 2 of the bill. Nobody else? Yeah. This bill came to us by request, as I understand it. yeah.
Exactly. Hang on, I'm looking for my Communication 596.1, yes. Are you going
Yeah,
to make the
and I
amendment?
would like to move to amend Bill number 80 with the contents of communication number 596.1.
All right, it's been moved by Ms. O'Hara and seconded by Ms. Leloy to amend Bill 80 with the contents of Communication 596.1. Ms. O'Hara or Ms. Leloy?
I stand in support of this. I think this amendment is just a change in language from deletion to additions, so it's not substantive. But I mean, it needs to be included in the bill, obviously. So I fully support this.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that up and making that note amendment to this for our formatting.
Point of order.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kanuha.
Can someone just tell me what the amendment is? Because I don't have it in front of me.
Oh,
I
I'm
know
sorry.
It's not substantial.
Okay. Mr. Kanua, it just adds the language that states new material is underscored, and in print in the ordinance, the underscoring need not, it's a formatting or drafting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. And if you need to say something, please shout out like you just did. Okay, good. Mahalo. Thank you. So there being no further discussion, all those in favor of amending Bill number 80 with the contents of Communication 596.1, please say aye. Any opposed? We have 8 ayes and 1 excused.